In a recent appearance on a Christians Engaged live stream, Texas State Representative Matt Schaefer unabashedly espoused his radical Christian nationalist ideology. Schaefer argued that every elected official must prioritize worshiping God and translating biblical commands into public policy. He asserted that any government failing to uphold biblical mandates is defying God. Schaefer's rhetoric underscores a concerning trend towards intertwining religious beliefs and political power, potentially undermining the principles of secular governance and individual freedoms. His views extend to using state power to outlaw abortion, framing it as a religious duty to protect the unborn. This intersection of religion and politics raises questions about the separation of church and state and the political consequences for civil liberties. This story is from Right Wing Watch by Kyle Mantley on March 8, 2024. Now, when I first read this, I couldn't help but think, he's almost preaching to his base here. You know, this is not just something that we hear from isolated incidents. It used to be more isolated, but this is getting more and more popular in evangelical circles, this type of rhetoric. You know, whether you call them Christian nationalists, just good old plain old fashioned fascists, or fascism in the name of God, or dominionism, what they're looking for is to control every aspect of not their lives, but of everyone's lives. And, you know, we talked about different things before, and whatever bad beliefs they want to have, I'll push back against them, but they have a right to believe that. But once they start stepping even a pinky over on the other side of infringing on someone else's rights, look, I don't care what you think God told you. Don't tell me to do what your God told you to do. Go ahead and do it. But once again, I do find it interesting that they're back to controlling women. You know, we're going to make sure that, you know, make sure abortion, because he really focused on abortion as one of those major issues, which I'm actually glad they're doing, because I think that the more we focus on abortion, the more fired up some people will be about this rhetoric and push back against it. But for me, at the end of the day, it comes back to something I've heard Jason talk about before, and that is that, to me, they're breaking their oath of office. They're unfit, and, you know, this is unbelievable, because to say that God's rules are premier, you know, I went and looked, and in the oath of office is, in the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of office of the state of Texas and will do the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States. So help me God. Well, fuck the God part. But when it comes down to defending the Constitution, I don't think anyone can claim that's what's going on here. Richard?
Well, you know, every time one of these people pops up, it makes me think about their narrow dogmatic positions. They always raise several simple questions, which they generally can't realistically answer without showing their sectarian dogmatism. For example, which God or gods are you talking about? 2, what religion under which God or gods you're talking about? I mean, Christianity has 2,000 or 3,000 subsets. Islam has 2 major claimants. The Jews have 5 or 6 different levels of, from Reform to, you know, ultra Hasidic. I mean, so we get to a place where, what, are we going to need a new supreme religious court to decide whose holy book is the right one and what each page means? I mean, you know, it just, because differences are going to arise. So it just drives me crazy that these people are not there to represent the people that voted for them. Because, you know, in my district, if somebody's being like that, they wouldn't be representing me, because I don't believe in their shit. And so, you know, you said what you said about not doing their duty, absolutely correct. But it's also just their frame of mind that somehow their narrow, you know, evidentiary-less beliefs should be telling other people what to do. And that's just crazy.
Yeah, I fully agree, man. I really do.
I'm sure Jason has some comments. Tell us, Jason.
Oh God,
Preach to us.
Let me say this in a sweet, kind way. You know, it fucking blows my mind. It really does, and it shouldn't, but it does. You know, this man is openly endorsing treasonous anti-American ideals that directly oppose life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Look, I have no problem with somebody believing in religious bullshit as long as they protect my right to not believe in that bullshit. I'll gladly support someone's right to not have an abortion as long as they defend a pregnant person's right to choose. I'll gladly support the right to vote for some stupid fucking idiot as long as they support my right to vote for another stupid fucking idiot. That, to me, that's America in a nutshell. It's like, I may hate you, sure you hate me, but we have common needs and we need to defend the right of one another to hate each other in peace. You know, again, it's treasonous, it's anti-American, and these people are scumbags. They really are. And they're striving to tear us apart. Ultimately, they're pitting workers against workers. I mean, look, if you read that statement that the Texas GOP released, I think it was like 2016, maybe 2017. I guess y'all have to be sharing my terror. It's this shit that's peddled in that document is anti-working class, anti-freedom, anti-democracy, anti-American. It demonizes the poor. It demonizes pregnant people. It demonizes queer people. It promotes misinformation, disinformation, and anti-scientific ideology that is eroding what little progress we've made in this state. Again, I'm a Texan. These are, and Richard hit on this, these are capitalists that are profiting off a title and a grift. They are using the label Christian. They're lining their pockets and they're scamming people who think they represent their interests. All the while, these same working class people are shooting themselves in the feet while these fuckers are laughing all the way to the bank and living atrocious lives that do not represent the way I was raised as a Christian, to give to the poor, to look out for the needy, and to take care of your community, to defend the rights of others, even though you may disagree. It's not the same thing. It's this Americhrist thing has fucking morphed into this capitalistic, imperialistic fucking money grab machine that uses single issue voting issues like abortion. Because that's all this fucking piece of shit is jumping on, is single issue shit. Because he knows that's the thing. I don't know. Look, Scott, I'm going to shoot it to you because I'm going to keep fucking ranting. It makes me sick because this fucking piece of shit is from my state, and he doesn't represent the majority. That's the problem with Abbott and all those people. Sorry, I can't get too political. His views do not represent the views of the majority of the humans here in this state and the needs. And what he is doing is harming those people by spreading this. Sorry, Scott, it's to you.
No, I totally agree. And in fact, I'll just continue on your rant, right? We're talking about Christian nationalism that's neither Christian nor nationalist, right? It is, but it's not in support of Christianity in many ways. It's not in support of the United States in many ways, as both of you were just saying. They're violating their oath. They're violating the Constitution. They're trying to. It's not about governing. It's not about improving the United States. It's not about bringing us together as a people. It's about lining their pockets. It's about getting their personal agendas pushed through by any means necessary. Yeah. And Infidel, you mentioned in the intro to this segment, you used a word and I jotted it down here, unabashedly. Okay, so that's the really frightening thing here, is because first of all, they're really, really pushing the envelope here, if even that, right? If not just blowing the envelope totally out of the water. But they're doing it right out in the open, and it's working. It's working in many ways. Obviously, there's many people catching on it. They saw a big backfire when they, when they were pushing the abortion issue before, and so they saw some pushback. So there are people that are catching on to these kind of things. But there are ways that should be used if you do have a belief, if you do want to mold the future of the country based on your beliefs, which is fine. That's part of what being an American is all about, is knowing that you'll be heard, knowing that your voice matters, knowing that your voice counts. There are things that you can do in pursuit of that. You can vote, there's legal activities, you can have discussions just like we're doing right now.
And you can think.
You can think. You can, certain types of advertising are perfectly legit ways of putting ideas out in the public sphere and letting, the public digest them and, keep some, reject others, and based on the merits of those arguments. There are ways, though, that we're seeing come to fore unabashedly coming to fore that are manipulative, that are subterfuge, that are trying to push it in spite of what America wants, in spite of the will of the people. For example, refusing to hold a vote on, for a nominated Supreme Court candidate, right? Undermining confidence in elections, gerrymandering, more severe forms of advertising, gaslighting. We see fake videos coming out. We see all kinds of stuff happening. And it's really, it boils down to, if you really have confidence that your ideas are good and are correct and are best for the country, then let's hear them. Let's discuss them. Let's talk about them. Let's go through our normal process of figuring out the way we, as a group, as a nation, as a planet, want our future. That's kind of what democracy is all about. Although we have heard them bad-mouthing democracy. We just a couple of weeks ago, we had our story about the CPAC speech that was literally talking about bringing down democracy as a goal. Saying Christ. It outright and openly, unabashedly bashing democracy. And so, it's really just, it's hard to imagine that this isn't this. How could this not just be a big dog whistle? I mean, this is really, they're pulling on these emotional strings. They're pulling on these psychological strings. There's manipulation happening here. And, as somebody who's that doesn't agree with this particular stance, it's easy for me to see. It's easy for us to see and to talk about what exactly is happening here. I try to put myself in the mind of people who disagree with me, and it's, this one's really hard for me to swallow. It's hard for me to imagine that somebody can sit there and not see what's going on, but clearly that's happening. I mean, many people that we know personally probably, are going along with this particular view. And so it's really, I don't know, it's really challenging. But I want to ask a question to the panel here. Do you think that part of all of their plan is to normalize Christian nationalism? Are they trying to just push it in our faces so that we get used to it? If so, do you think that they're going to be successful? Infidel, what do you think about that?
I think that there's definitely a segment of that group that is looking to normalize these absolutely bigoted, intolerant views. I think that it's short-sighted. I am afraid that, I know people in my wife's family in particular who were completely apolitical, who now are completely on board with all this, but they're overlooking the fact that they're an extreme minority religion. They are not mainstream Christianity. And what I think that they fail to understand is that if you normalize something like this, and we really do become that Christian nation that they like to falsely portray us as our origins, what you're going to get is the same violence that we saw in Europe before this country, because then once the Christians, for the lack of a better way to put it, get in the power, then the problem is going to be is who's really a Christian, who's Christian enough. And then you're going to see people who thought that, hey, we were going to do things my way, because a lot of them, I think, are politically ignorant. And I don't mean that as an insult. They just really are not well educated on politics. And they've been drafted into this cause because their church preaches this to them week in and week out, and they become politicalized and radicalized, and they're going, yeah, we need to make this a Christian nation again. We need to do this. We need to do that. And they forget that as soon as some of the people that are in power who are screaming that, they're going to be like, oh, well, you don't accept the Trinity. You're not really a Christian. You don't do this. You're not really a Christian. And they're going to see the same problems and difficulties that we saw in Europe come, centuries ago, right back here. Our founders were smart enough to realize we don't want to recycle that. And that's why the rules were the way they were. Whether you think they were Christian or not, they knew one thing: we left that behind for a reason. And I say now, hey, wake up, open your eyes, and realize we left that behind for a reason. Let's leave it there. We have enough things that we can disagree about and work out among ourselves. We don't need to fight the fight that we had hundreds of years ago again.
Right, Richard? What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah,
Are they
well, I
normalizing
agree
Christian
with Infidel
nationalism?
totally. That the dictatorial nature of the Church of England is what created America to many degrees, because people had to get the hell out of there. The other thing that scares me, having a science background before I got into doing legal stuff, is that if we get into these beliefs that don't deal with evidence and rational thought and logic, we're going to fall behind scientifically from the rest of the world, and our economy is going to go straight to hell if there isn't hell. I mean, if you bring up kids telling them that evolution isn't true and that you have to believe the Earth is 6,000 years old and that's it, and all that kind of stuff, they're not going to learn things properly. I mean, the one thing about science is that language is the same in every country.
Yep.
2 and 2 is 4, everywhere. I mean, that's the thing, that's a language we can communicate with. But when everybody has their own religious views that are dogmatic, sectarian, and against each other's, then it doesn't look like there's a good hope for the world staying, peaceful. And the history has been that it hasn't. And so, if we can get these people to try to think about stuff as opposed to, prophesize, which is their favorite thing to do, like this guy was doing, we have some hope if people will start thinking more and be critical and analytical and, check stuff out and see what makes sense, not what you want it to be because your parents told you had to believe that.
Right.
And that's the problem. And these guys want to get control of everything and tell us how to live. And I don't want anybody telling me how to live.
So do you think maybe they're like, because they're bringing it up in stump speeches now, they're bringing it up in, in the news, and they're talking about it unabashedly. Right. And so do you think, Richard, that that's part of the plan, though? Do you think
there's no
we want to, because there's things that you say quietly and there's things that you say out loud, and now they're saying this out loud. Do you think they're trying to make it part of the normal, American vernacular? Are they trying to change the discussion?
Not the American vernacular. There is no question in my mind that these people that talk like that, they want a theocracy. And they want to, be... Again, you get back to that same old thing. Who's going to interpret the word of God? I mean, this is always the big fight amongst these people, right? I mean, even with the Islamic religion, there's 2 major sects, Sunni and Shia. Wherever it is, there's going to be different interpretations when it's not being done on a rational, evidence-based basis. So, they want to have a theocracy because they think that'll give them more control to deal with, and I know everybody on this panel understands this, dealing with the other. That's one of the things they want to do is, you're not the same as me, so I have the religion, I have control, I can dominate you and push you aside and make you a second-class citizen or a third-class citizen or dead or in jail if you don't agree with us. So that's what happens. And, just the whole thing about the sexuality stuff, it's been scientifically established for years that a certain percentage of human beings are going to be homosexual. That's a scientific reality. And these people keep saying, well, that was a choice. I mean, where are these? They just talk out their butts. They don't even look at research and what's done.
Richard, let's put a pin in that. Let's put a pin in that right there, talking out their butts. Okay, I want to get Jason's opinion on the are they normalizing Christian nationalism? Is this a strategic move that they're doing by the way that they're bringing it up, the way that they're pushing it, and basically pushing it into the news cameras, right? They're putting it in all of our tongues and all of our minds. Is that part of a plan? Are they trying to normalize things?
It's already been normalized since Limbaugh. I don't think they're trying. I think it's already been done. I think the reason Trump was elected is because Limbaugh existed. Okay. I think the current landscape is directly related to people like him, Alex Jones, and other media things. I don't know. I think the Christian nationalist language has been getting established since Reagan, and focus on the family and all this stuff about purity and all these things, the way they established it. And if you look at, there's myriads of empirical studies that show you that religious belief in itself is negligibly harmful, even if it's, especially if it's like a culturally relative belief that doesn't, the thing that gives it fucking power and the power to do what we're all pissed off about is an authoritarian government. So you take authoritarianism or totalitarianism, you mix it with religion, and Richard's like, who's going to interpret it? The government. That's who's going to interpret it. So what we're seeing now,
or somebody else.
Yeah, well, what we're seeing and where we see it get power is when a government starts to interpret the religion for everybody else. And when you start thinking about it, that's what a theocracy is. That's the government interpreting the religion for everybody else and enforcing that interpretation. The governmental, and it's authoritarianism and totalitarianism. So you get a religion that already has an authoritarian backbone, and then you get a government system that has an authoritarian backbone, and they merge so perfectly. This is how cults start. A cult generally is not a far deviation from the already pre-existing major religion in that region. That's how they're able to do it. That's why let's say in California, you have things like transcendental meditation and a lot of hippie shit. That's just like normal. That's culturally, acceptable beliefs out there. But that's why you get cults that are able to kind of branch off, but still have that same shit. That's why in Texas, you have Christian cults. That's why you have other cults in different places, because it takes what's already pre-existing and just deviates a little bit. That's all you're doing whenever religion and government merge together. You're taking what the religion has, you're taking what the government has, and you're all just kind of working, and you're not really deviating too much, but then you put people in power and figureheads and you enforce it. And after a while, everybody just kind of recognizes that they were already bowing to an authoritarian religion. So sacrificing your empathy for authority, which we've seen in empirical studies across the board and we know about already, is already second nature. So of course you're going to sacrifice your empathy for authority, because you've been trained since your fucking developmental years to do that automatically without question, and to feel guilt and to feel shame and to feel like you deserve to be punished for not doing that and for being skeptical. So yes, I believe it has already happened. I just believe the language changes, just like instead of charisma, my kid says, oh, they've got that Riz. I'm like, it just means charisma. That shit is seen. It's like, okay, so that stuff's like cool and kind of edgy. When a scene for me was like talking about, the words may change and delivery may change, but it's still the same shit. And it's been going on since Reagan era. And all we're seeing it now is just a different name to the same fucking dog. I don't see anything different. I just see people being bolder and more actually being a much harder line, and people deviating more from reason and being okay with it. And we actually see this increase across the board globally. We have seen an increase in religiosity as opposed to a decrease due to the internet, due to time space compression, due to global, like true globalism. You know what I'm saying? Like global connection. People thought that religiosity would plummet, but actually now it is skyrocketing, and it's ridiculous. And I don't know. I feel hopeless most of the time whenever we talk about these things, because I'm looking at a country to where the majority of the people believe that there's gonna be a judgment day.
Right.
I mean, it just, I don't know. I could rant about this.
Right.
I could talk about this for 2 hours. So I don't know.
It's easy to make these decisions when you know that there's that big prize at the end, right? This is just filthy rags.
What
this life,
you're making no decisions. You're literally making no decision. It's easy to give your decision-making ability over. It's funny because Hobbes argues for that, but not in so much this way. This is more like you're sacrificing your decisions on the altar of Christ, being a slave to Christ. Of course, people are going to be okay giving over their freedoms and rights because they were already fucking primed to since birth to be a slave to Christ, to be a slave to Allah, to be all these things. I have no power. I'm just part of this flow. That's what it is. It's just priming to give over your fucking any part of your will or freedom to the machine, man. It's disgusting.
So what you're saying is we have Christian nationalism is already normalized to the point where we have this population that are primed to receive that kind of thing. As you mentioned before, that there's tons and tons of research that shows that there's connections between, individuals who are prone to accept an authoritarian position, are prone to accept an authoritarian rule. I've seen videos saying, yeah, I would accept a king, no problem. And it's, these are, and at the same time, they're wearing the American flag. I was like, well, I'm not sure if you're, maybe you should read that history book. I think we had a problem with the last time we had a king. That's why we got the United States here. But it's like we're baby stepping to tyranny, right? We're starting out here at this level where we have, people that are primed to this, and then it's just an easy push. It's just an easy push off the edge. And I did have one other question. I want maybe we can just get a quick answer from the panel here. Everybody kind of has mentioned, they have their right to believe what they want, but it's when you start pushing it on other people that we run into problems. So let's talk about this specific article here about Matt Schaefer. Does his sincerity, does that matter? Is if he's sincere, shouldn't we support his right to say these kind of things, or does that matter? Should he have the right to express his views even when we rage against those views themselves? Does sincerity matter, Infidel?
I think that sincerity matters in one sense, but not at all when it comes down to the acceptance of his message. Because at the end of the day, like many other people, they want to bring about the end of the world. They're looking to bring about an apocalypse. So when you sincerely believe in a belief that the end goal is to bring about the end of the world, literally, I think we should all not only be hesitant and, as Jason mentioned, frightened and concerned about it, but to adamantly oppose that in every possible way.
Richard, what do you think? Does sincerity matter at all?
This is one of the reasons why these folks don't pay any attention to what's happening to our climate. I have 2 grandkids, and, they're like 6 and 8 years old. And 30 years from now, when I'm dead, I would like them to be able to breathe the air. It would be real nice that they would have an environment, a planet that was healthy and safe to be on. But the way things are going, especially with these people who think, well, geez, Jesus is going to come in the next 20 or 30 years anyway. You know how many times people have predicted that? And when it didn't happen, they keep predicting. If you look at the Bible, he said it was going to happen within a generation of him, and it never happened. I mean, it's a joke, but it really has a destructive thing in our society because it keeps us, sincerity. Yeah, I don't care about his sincerity. What I care about is if he tries to implement that stuff. I mean, he can say whatever he wants. We have free speech. That's fine.
Sincere or not, there's a line. No, cross this line.
That's
you do not cross.
His sincerity has nothing to do with whether I'm going to accept it or not. It's based on the actual politics of what he's laying down. And with what he said, I'm against him as long as I'm breathing.
Okay, so Jason, then, if sincerity. Regardless of sincerity, Richard is saying, regardless of sincerity, you can't cross this line. Should we support his right to rile up his troops to try to push across that line? Is that within the bounds of a sincere belief, or should we push back against that as well?
Well, I mean, the guy's a representative, and he's supposed to represent. I can't view that guy other than a fucking traitor and treasonous. What he's doing right now is anti-American. Okay. And I don't give a fuck about his sincerity.
So maybe you think he's already across the line. He's not trying to push across the line. He's trying to drag people.
Are you serious? We've all been so primed to accept this type of rhetoric. All of us, even all of us on this panel, we've all been so primed to and we've heard this shit so much that look, here's the fucking problem is that if this dude was Islamic, people would be fucking burning down his house. If this dude was of some obscure like smaller religion, people would be calling him insane and crazy. If the God name that he was using was a different God name and he was saying this shit, they'd be saying he'd be out of he would already be ousted out of office, saying that he's anti-American, that he's trying to impose insane religious shit on people. I mean, this is the only reason nobody is freaking out over this is because we are already accepting Christian nationalism as a norm in our fucking life. Everybody is just kind of bowed to it.
Privilege. Then it comes back to privilege.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. If you want to listen to more audio-only podcasts, you can find the Nonprofits and all of the ACA shows in audio-only format at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts, or click right here.